an employee feels the owner treats them more like a person than just a statistic,
Mhm.
they're going to get a much better relationship between the two of them.
Oh,
Yes.
yes, absolutely. Um, when we show how much we care, then we can build that bridge and that relationship with the employees. When managers or owners are resistant to employees working remotely, the biggest pushback I hear is, well, if they're at home, they're not working. And my counter to them is when you are home at night catching up on the day, are you working at your desk? Oh my gosh, I get so much more done at home because I'm not interrupted. And then I'll say, why do you think that's any different for your
Right.
employees? And they're like, oh, I never looked at it that way. So again, opening up having that devil's advocate argument with yourself to say, well, why should I assume that? That's a story I'm telling myself. How do we get to the fact and try it out?
Yep. Back
Yeah.
to having those conversations and talking it through to see what fits.
And I would guess you do reoccurring visits with a lot of
Oh yeah.
them over the
Yeah.
years because conditions have changed, the market has changed,
Mhm.
maybe they've grown, maybe they've shrunk, and they need a new vision for what they're
Yes.
currently doing or adjusting to what the world is doing around them or something.
Yeah,
Hmm.
exactly right. There's many of my clients that I've been with for numbers of years. And in fact, just yesterday, um, I was on the phone catching up with a client that I did work 3 years ago, and they said, you know what? It's time for us to revisit our strategic plan. Um, we need to start thinking about what are we going to do next? How are we going to make this change or this shift? And so that continued check-in, for one, it's fun with me, building relationships. Whether we are working on a project or not, I get to know business owners and their managers. Sometimes it's a once a year, we'll just say hello and might have, something they need, a training event, a workshop.
Yeah, because
Other
you want to
times,
stay in touch with your clients,
yes.
ask them, do you have any new problems or are there any new issues you'd like us to look at for you or something? Because we'd be happy to. And
Yeah.
that
And
would
it's,
get you a lot of repeat business, I would think.
yeah, it certainly does. But I usually lead with the, hey, how are you doing? And what are you proud of? And what's happened? And what are you frustrated with? Just hearing from them as they're leading their business. And then,
And,
if there's
and I
future
would think
work,
a lot of smaller businesses might even come to you and say, well, my son or daughter's interested in maybe taking over this business from me in a few years. Could you help them develop the skills they need to take over,
right?
and keep it run the way it's been run always? A lot of family businesses are multi-generation.
Exactly. I would say the majority of the work that I do ends up being with family-owned businesses, and that multi-generation succession planning is really hard. And it just doesn't happen naturally in most
Right.
cases. Um, the second generation, a business has about a 40% chance of failing. If you could take it to the third generation, you've got about a 20% chance of being successful.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so
They
working with
need,
that multi-generation is fun. So it's fun talking about those generations, about what grandpa thinks versus what the grandchild thinks.
yeah,
We all have, everyone has something to offer,
Yes.
and we
We
learn from our youth too because they have fresh ideas, and they're
right.
creative
Because
thinkers and independent thinkers, and so it's important to
Absolutely.
hear them.
Yep.
Yeah, because
exactly.
the market you're dealing with, it reflects some of their generation, the younger generation, and they can bring good insights into people around their age and what they're thinking.
Yeah, it's amazing how often the oldest generation they'll be looking to the younger generation to maybe help them with technology, but then the
Right.
younger is looking to them to say, how did you navigate all this change, or what happened during this phase or that phase or this time or that time. So um, we need each other and we need to learn from each other.
Right.
Now, Charlie, you've got, your background as an athlete and a coach. What are some of the skills and strengths that can kind of come over from the sports side that really help teams in helping them develop and accomplishing their goals and staying motivated and working together to accomplish something great together?
A lot of it's just team building from the standpoint of helping teams understand that everybody communicates a little differently, has slightly different values. How do you recognize everybody's a little bit different, but at the same time, everybody is headed in the right direction or the same direction? It's just working with them to kind of smooth off the rough edges when you have a group of people, because anytime you have a group of people, it's rare that everybody is all on one page or all together with the same level of motivation. Sometimes it's just misunderstanding, helping them to understand that one person on the team seems really gung-ho, and just because you don't seem as gung-ho as they are doesn't mean that you're not, motivated and excited. So it's just helping them to communicate with each other and work together and build the team. Yeah. So that's where sports are very much like work teams. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that we often are talking about, and we will bounce off each other, is just the culture, identifying what that culture is. And so when you're working with a team and you're thinking about the culture, how do you start to bring that awareness in either organizations or a sports team? I'll ask him that question.
Oh gosh, that's a hard one. A lot of it is just start by listening and talking. And as Sharon said earlier, what are the goals of the work team? What are you trying to accomplish? And starting there and helping everybody to understand what those goals are and how everybody's working towards that. Whether everybody may not be working exactly the same, but if they're all headed in the right direction with whatever their job is, then that's good. And recognize that there are those differences there.
And do you find that many employees who have been there a while come up with really great ideas, and you want to make sure those ideas get to people at the top? Because
Absolutely.
Yes.
I remember the old joke, you'd always see a business would have a suggestion box, outside the, I don't know, CEO's office or something. And I would think, a lot of times many senior employees know as much about your business as you do, and they might see something that's fundamentally better. So you want to find a way to always encourage employees who have good ideas to share them with people at the top.
Yeah, and having a relationship, the employees and the leadership having that relationship to where the employees feel comfortable sharing an idea. I remember one time, one group we were working with, the employees had a great idea that kept getting shot down, and there was some kind of like, well, we're not bringing up these ideas because they shoot them down. But then the leadership explained that was a great idea. Here's why we shot it down. You didn't know about this situation over here. And then the employees were like, oh, if we had known that, then we wouldn't have gotten disappointed when you shut us down because we thought you were just shooting us down for no reason.
Communication, of course.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, I would think you'd always explain why you implement an idea or why you don't implement an idea.
Yeah.
And make it understandable for everybody to see why or why not you should be able to do this.
Yeah.
Oh, the why behind things are so important. Simon Sinek has often talked about, just know what the why is. What I do find leaders assume that they have already communicated the why, but they really haven't. Or they don't feel like they need to be that transparent. They're afraid or they don't want to be vulnerable. But understanding and clearly sharing the why is also one of those valuable management tips that can help you go a long way.
And one thing I always liked, there was this TV show where big CEOs would dress up
Yeah.
sloppily and pretend to be
Undercover
a
boss
employee
Yeah.
and walk around the floor for a day or two. to get an idea, of what
Yeah.
it's really like to be an employee, maybe at the ground level. And I
Yeah.
think that that's a great learning experience to encourage all higher ranking people to do work as an ordinary. I think even the president of Uber drives an Uber one
Yeah.
day a
Right.
year and picks up customers just to see what it's like.
See what it's really,
Yeah.
because if you are now running a multi-million-dollar company or have, layers between you and the entry level, you've probably forgotten what it was like, or it
Yeah,
may
the
have never even been
difficulty.
that way when you started. And so you
Right.
don't know what it's like.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's good to understand it, sink down to their level, and see what they're putting up with that, you might need to change,
Yeah.
give you a great idea.
Sometimes it's helpful for the management to understand that if employees aren't performing, it's not for lack of effort on the employees. They're not, bad attitudes. Sometimes it's just the processes or the systems
Yeah,
are
that something is not done well
right.
with the idea of helping the employees do the job better.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of different ways people can learn there, and people learn all different kinds of ways. Some you can talk to them and they like that, they want to listen. Some like to do it on their own. They prefer to independent learners. So you have modules that people can use remotely online. Sharon, you both do stuff in person,
I
workshops
do.
and on site. So to give us a little overview of how people can access your services, and from the
Yeah.
coaching to the training workshops.
So the first thing, anybody can connect with us at justiceleadership.com, and you'll be invited to join our newsletter. And that's the first place. I share lots of free content, checklists and tools and reminders, about once a week or once every 10 days. I won't, overwhelm you, but that's the first place to get help to lead your team. And then more formally, if you've got just one issue that you're solving and you are an independent learner, I have a library of course modules that are around the basic components of leading and managing a people managing a business. And so you can subscribe or take one course or online course or multiple courses. As we get further into what really can make a difference with your business, it could be in the form of a strategy retreat. It could be a workshop where we're conducting leadership development topics with a group of leaders or employees so that you're all learning together either one time or multiple times. And then ultimately, there's an opportunity for um, ongoing coaching, executive coaching or business coaching, where I am with you a pretty regular time, helping you achieve your goals as a leader and walking you through and seeing progress toward those goals. So it runs from just read what's out there and learn to let me walk beside you and help you achieve what's next for you and your business. I also can be found on all the socials, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. There will be visuals or checklist or a reminder 2 to 3 times a week just to keep you focused on communicating well and leading your people well.
So some of my background is in nonprofit administration.
Mhm.
One of the challenges that I faced as an administrator and an executive director type positions was the board of directors. And in a nonprofit scenario,
Right.
some of the challenges were maybe their lack of engagement, maybe not always being available, the attendance, their level of participation. So from time to time, we'd have board retreats, an
Mhm.
opportunity for them to connect outside of a regular meeting and
Yeah.
be able to become more aligned with the organization and an active part. So do you have something for the nonprofit side as well?
I do. I love working with nonprofits, and I have a number that I work with on a regular basis for all the reasons you just described. An executive director is trying to do it all. A board mostly are volunteers, and you have to get aligned. So many of the tools that I use with my business clients, we're able to use with our nonprofit. We just changed the framework and the point of reference slightly. We are talking about volunteers versus employees, but still, we need to have a strategy. We need to know where we're headed and what success looks like. And for a board and the participants in a nonprofit, you need to have really roles and responsibilities. The business world, we call those job descriptions. And then what are we going to be accountable for? How are we going to give feedback? What our accountabilities are? So it's very similar, just a different frame of reference. And I love working with nonprofits because they are the backbone of our community. They make us all better.
Yes. Jeff, do you have anything more for Sharon and
Well,
Charlie while we're visiting?
not really. I just thought of an off the wall question. Would somebody come to you if they're having a big, they have a large family and they suddenly are all not working well together to try and put the family back on the track, and who needs to change and who doesn't need to change, and let's make life better for grandma,
Yeah.
next Thanksgiving, instead of having a big fight like we did this year or something like that.
I'm not a therapist, although some days it feels like therapy. Um, when I do get those calls, and it's usually though because the family is all somehow in a family-owned business.
Yeah.
So that's usually
Oh,
where it
yeah,
comes up. And we're
right.
also then bringing in the brother and the cousin or the grandkid who are not necessarily in the business, but they are related to everybody in the business. And so the family can get involved. That's usually when it happens.
Okay, yeah. It seems like most family-owned businesses seem to work together better than non-family-owned businesses in general. That's my impression. I don't know if it's true or not, but yeah.
I think it depends on the family.
Yeah.
Because you see,
50-50.
because I,
Yeah.
I remember at one point my son-in-law was named Victor Tuning, and I spent my honeymoon in Williamsburg, Virginia, the colonial town. And he said, when you go there, look and see that there's a Tuning's Tavern. So the tavern went back over 200 years,
Wow.
in his family. So, I'm thinking that family-run business, hung in there for 200
They
years,
they
and
did
that's pretty
something.
amazing.
Yeah. They did something right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but working with those families are really usually a joy because they have to choose to stay in the business and stay working with each other, or at least how they're going to separate family life, work life, and maybe chasing another career. So there's some
Right.
nuances to it.
And you touched on briefly earlier about succession planning. So, people do need to think about what if I pass away today? What's going to happen to the
Right.
business
Yeah.
tomorrow? The employees, the family, who's going to take it over, all those
Mhm.
things. So, can you just really quickly just kind of talk about the benefits of that and what happens if you don't? Because you do help people with that, putting that plan together.
Absolutely.
But it's really
So,
important. I know it's not something people think about that they need
right.
to.
So the continuity of business is really important to consider as you're leading a business. So there's the short term, what happens if somebody gets sick? What things will fall through the cracks and not be done? We need to have a plan for that. And many times there are individuals in an organization or the owner that hasn't outlined what those responsibilities are. So that's a short term look. We also have to look at, do we want this business to continue after we have decided to retire or if we pass away? So we can either run the business and at the end of our life say, I'm just going to shut it down because I have not planned and I've not sold and there's nobody after me. And that's often what will happen if we do not engage in the thoughtful planning. Is there somebody that I want to groom to come behind me? Is it a family member, a child? Is it somebody that lives down the street that I want to bring into the business and start to sell to them? And so when we identify what their goal is, then we start to work on what are the gaps? What do they know? What do they need to know? And how do we close those gaps? And so everything that we do is about managing those gaps. So there may be a function that only happens one time a year with a business. we need to make sure that we get that successor exposed to it when it comes around. And we're very intentional. Some things happen every day. We can worry a little bit about that, and it will happen, but we need to be intentional with a plan and then managing and exposing and coaching through that plan because it's not going to happen overnight. But if you are incapacitated, if you pass away, heaven forbid, something tragic happens, then that business and your successors are at risk. And that's not the burden that we all want to leave with our generations coming behind us. At least that's not what I want to leave.
We have a lot of conversations about institutional knowledge, people in the organization or the family that have knowledge, but it's not written down anywhere or it's not captured anywhere. And so if that you take that person out of it
in their
for whatever
head.
reason, yeah, it leaves a big gap. And you mentioned earlier that a lot of businesses may not think about that. Oftentimes they think about it, but it's such an uncomfortable thought to have to deal with it or go there that they'll just like kicking the can down the road and like let's
Yeah,
don't talk about that.
they
We'll
need
get to it
somebody
when
objective like you to bring up issues maybe that are a little uncomfortable but need to
yeah,
be addressed.
Yeah.
yeah,
That's why Charlie can bring up these uncomfortable conversations because we're not living in the emotional place.
Right.
They're living in the emotional place, that is a great place to be. But we have to meld them together. The logic and the emotion will help us get to the right answer. And that's what we bring. The other thing, going back to your question about technology, the leader doesn't want to address it. They don't know how to address it. And then figuring out how to document things can be daunting. And so that's where sometimes I will very casually say, there's a tool now that will record your keystrokes in the computer and you don't have to write it down. It'll do it for you. Or you can just talk to this little app and then we can create some standard operating procedures after the fact.
Right. They can use AI. It
Yes.
really
So
help them develop, things that maybe they don't really understand completely or thoroughly enough to do themselves. And then the AI will give them ideas, and then they can shape those ideas into what they want.
right.
And the AI has done some of the hard work for
it's
them.
done some of the hard work.
And on that matter, a lot of times the things that we do is coming in and asking the questions. We're not telling organizations, here's the answer. We're asking the questions and helping them arrive at the answers that are the right
Yeah,
answers
because a lot
because
of
of
times
them.
they don't know the questions to ask.
Right.
Right.
Exactly. And just a little bit of guidance to help them get their train of
Right.
thought. And usually they have the answers. They just need help getting there. Yeah.
Very good.
That's wonderful. Well, Sharon and Charlie, thank you so much for visiting with us today. Our show, AIM Investing, we talk about all kinds of money matters, and there are many things that we invest in the course of a lifetime. But for businesses to invest in their employees and invest in their processes and improving is a wonderful way for people to
Absolutely.
to invest in their future and of their families. So
Exactly.
we thank you for sharing this with us. And justiceleadership.com is where you need to get started. And there is a number of ways that Sharon and Charlie can help you and your business in reaching your goals. So we thank you both so very much, and we look forward to
Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having us. It was a great conversation.
Yep. Thanks for having us.
You're welcome. And we'll make sure that the audience has a chance to be able to learn more about your programs and be able to reach you to sign up.
Great. Thank you.
Are you worried about the future and your current bank balance? It's not too late to catch up with the incredible AIM investing method, the system you can learn and share with others. For generations of wealth building, get started today at jjjinvesting.com. Meet Tony Lee, rising country singer and artist. He's a husband, father, and all-American, celebrating his roots with the release of his new album, The American Dream, now available on Amazon Music. Serving up the comfort food of country with favorites such as Back to Nashville.
Now there's no Loretto, Cash is long gone. The spirit of their music still lingers on. Slowly pulled to the side of the road, 'cause I turned on the radio.
Sweet Mansfield Dreams.
Sweet little Mansfield is where they lay me to rest. These tidal bones as my soul flies on like an eagle leaving its nest.
Get your copy today at Amazon Music. That's rising star Tony Lee and his album The American Dream.